Okay, I have a question for you, and I want you to really think about it before you answer.
Oh boy.
No, it's a classic, but if you actually sit with it for a second, it's genuinely terrifying. How do you know right now, firmly and without a shadow of a doubt, that you are not dreaming?
You are starting with the heavy existential dread today, aren't you?
I am. Because think about it, if I pinched you, you'd say, ouch, that's real. But
Uh,
I've felt pain in dreams. I've had conversations in dreams that felt just as real, just as, textured as this one. The coffee tasted like coffee. The fear felt like fear.
that's
So
right.
what is the actual proof?
It is the ultimate question, isn't it? I mean, the ground feels solid beneath your feet, and my voice sounds clear in your ears, but your brain is perfectly capable of fabricating all of that in a dark room while you sleep.
Exactly.
And that specific doubt, that Cartesian doubt, is exactly where we are starting this deep dive.
We are looking at a source text today titled Le rêve et le cerveau, or Dreams and the Brain. And honestly, calling it a source text feels like, well, it feels like underselling it. It's not your standard sleep study with charts about REM cycles.
No, it's a really unique beast. It sits right at the intersection of hard neuroscience, evolutionary biology, and deep, almost poetic philosophy.
Right.
It starts with the mechanics of the brain, goes through the evolution of the eyeball, and ends up in this profound conflict between science and the human soul.
It really is a trip. And the mission for this deep dive is pretty specific. We want to unpack the relationship between the sleeping mind and the waking world. We want to challenge your perception of what is real.
And honestly, by the end of this, I think you're going to understand why looking at the universe as just a big machine, which is how science often presents it, might actually feel a little empty. And more importantly, where the solution to that emptiness might be hiding.
So let's go back to that first question. If the dream state can mimic the waking state so perfectly, how do we trust anything? Does the text give us an anchor?
It does, but it might not be the anchor you expect. The source argues that there is actually a very specific distinction between the two states. And it isn't how vivid the experience is, it's memory.
Memory. But I remember my dreams, sometimes vividly.
You remember them after you wake up.
Yeah.
But think about your mental state inside the dream. In a dream, you usually lack a historical context. You are cut off from your own timeline.
Okay, let me test that. Right now, I know I'm hosting a deep dive. I know I drove here. I know what I had for breakfast. I have a chain of events leading up to this second.
Exactly. You are constantly comparing your present moment to a long chain of past moments. You have a before.
Yeah.
In a dream, you usually just manifest.
You just there.
You're suddenly on a boat,
Mhm.
or you're back in high school. You rarely stop to ask, wait, how did I get here? I haven't been in high school for 20 years.
That's so true. I just accept the premise. Oh, I guess I'm a pirate now. There's no backstory check.
Precisely. You lack that suspicion because you lack the continuous chain of memory to compare it against. You accept the reality presented to you because you have no reference data to contradict it.
Hmm.
And this leads the text to a really provocative idea. We judge dreams unfairly.
Unfairly how?
We call dreams incoherent or crazy or vain. But the text says we are judging them by the wrong rulebook. We are applying waking logic to a state where logic doesn't exist. The force suggests that what we call waking life is essentially just an ordered dream.
An ordered dream. That's a sticky phrase.
It is, isn't it? It implies that the only thing separating this moment from a hallucination is the strict application of cause and effect.
Like, if I drop this cup, it falls.
That's the rule. That's the rule of the waking state. The dream state isn't fake. It's just a reality where those rules have dissolved.
So the dream is only vain if you try to fit it into a spreadsheet. But while you're in it, it has its own internal consistency.
Exactly. It's a different mode of existence. But that raises the next big question, which the text tackles immediately. If the brain isn't following the rules of the outside world during a dream, if it's not using the laws of physics, where is it getting the material? Is it just making it up?
Ex nihilo, right. Creating from nothing.
Right. And the source is very firm on this. No, the brain is not a magician. It's a remix artist.
A remix artist. I like that. It sounds less mystical.
It is less mystical, but it's fascinating biologically. The brain is spontaneous, sure. It
Yeah.
transforms, it dissociates things, but it cannot create something it has never encountered.
Uh-huh.
The text uses a fascinating, if somewhat somber example to prove this. A person born blind.
Oh, right. This part really stuck with me, because I've always wondered about that.
The source notes that someone blind from birth does not dream in visual images. They don't see colors or shapes in their sleep because their brain has never received that data from the outside world.
So they dream in sound and touch.
Sound, touch, spatial awareness, temperature, the sensory language they know. This proves that the new worlds we visit in sleep are essentially collages. The brain takes the data it received while awake, the faces, the streets, the feelings, and pastes them together in new, often bizarre configurations.
So it can't hallucinate a color it hasn't seen?
It can't.
But hang on, I have to push back a little here, because when I dream, the space feels huge. I can dream I'm standing in a giant prairie that goes on forever. If my brain is just remixing data, where does that sense of infinite space come from? If I'm sleeping in a tiny room, how is my brain building a prairie?
That is one of the most mind-bending concepts in this text. The source calls it fictional space.
Unpack that for me.
Okay. In the real world, space is a container. You are in a room. The room exists whether you are looking at it or not. But in a dream, the prairie isn't a place you are visiting. The prairie is the sensation.
The prairie is the sensation.
Yes. The visual sensation of the meadow and the meadow itself are one and the same thing. The space is inextricably linked to the feelings filling it. You can't separate the dream meadow from your seeing of the meadow.
So if I stop looking at it or stop feeling it, it literally stops existing.
In a way, yes. The brain generates the stage and the actor simultaneously. It's projecting the movie and watching it at the same time. And it does the same thing with time.
Time distortion. I've definitely had that. I wake up thinking I've lived a whole life, gone on a quest, raised a family, and I look at the clock and it's been 20 minutes.
The text calls that fictional duration. The brain creates its own measure of time, just like it creates its own measure of space. It's operating in what you might call a sandbox mode. The physics engine is off, the clock is unplugged, and the brain is just building with whatever blocks it has lying around.
Okay, so up to this point, we've been talking about the internal world. The brain locked in the skull, remixing its memories, playing in the sandbox. But about halfway through, the text makes a huge pivot. It stops looking in and starts looking out.
It does. And this is where the deep dive really earns its name. It transitions from the dream world to the cosmic medium.
Cosmic medium. That sounds very sci-fi. Are we talking about outer space?
We're talking about the physical nature of the universe. The text describes the universe not as stuff, but as vibration, an ocean of movement, light, sound, heat. At the fundamental level, science tells us it's all just waves and shutters in the ether.
And our brain is just floating in this ocean of waves.
Exactly. And this is where we get to the evolution of the senses.
Yeah.
This is probably my favorite part of the reading, the gelatin analogy.
Yes, walk us through that because it's such a vivid image for how we actually evolved.
So the text asks us to imagine the very origin of life. Not a human, not even a fish. Just a primitive, homogeneous blob of living jelly. Protoplasm. It has no eyes, no ears, no nose. It's just there.
Okay, I'm picturing the blob.
Now, this blob is being bombarded by the universe. It is plunged into this cosmic medium. For millions of years, light waves hit it. Sound waves hit it. The text argues that the organs we have today, the eye, the ear, weren't just pre-planned designs. They were carved by the environment.
So the eye didn't just appear to see the light. The light created the eye.
That's the argument. The eye is an organ specifically differentiated to catch light vibrations. The ear is an organ tuned to catch sound vibrations. It's adaptation in its purest form. And the text brings in two heavy hitters of 19th century science to back this up. Helmholtz and Young.
I remember the name Helmholtz. He's the sound guy, right?
Hermann von Helmholtz, yes. He proposed a theory that is still fascinating today. He suggested that inside the ear, we essentially have microscopic structures that act like resonators. Think of them like tiny tuning forks.
Tuning forks. So a sound wave hits my ear, and the specific fork that matches that frequency starts vibrating.
Exactly. That is sympathetic resonance. If you hold a tuning fork near a piano and hit the matching key, the fork vibrates. Helmholtz argued we hear because we have a mechanism that physically sympathizes with the external vibration.
And Young did the same for the eye.
Thomas Young, yes. He proposed that the retina has specific receivers, what we now call rods and cones, corresponding to determined colors: red, green, blue. The takeaway here is profound. We are built by the universe to perceive the universe. Our brain isn't a stranger here. It's a product of the cosmic medium.
This connects to the music section, too. I've always wondered why some noise is just noise like a jackhammer and other noise is music. Why do we like a C major chord? Why does it feel right?
Well, the text says it's all math. Agreeable sounds correspond to simple numerical ratios. If a vibration is exactly double the speed of another, we hear an octave. It sounds clean to us because the waves line up perfectly.
So we like it because it fits the math of our internal tuning forks.
Right. It implies a harmony between the movements of our brain and the movements of the universe. When those ratios align, we experience beauty. We are essentially instruments being played by the physics of the world.
That is beautiful, but also a little mechanical. We are instruments being played. It makes consciousness sound like just another vibration, just another physics equation.
And you've hit the nail on the head. This is the crisis of meaning that the text builds toward. Because if you follow the scientific logic all the way down, you run into a massive problem.
The robot problem.
The text calls it the invisible movement. Science tells us that the reality of the world isn't the color red you see or the warmth of the sun you feel. Those are just illusions created by your brain. The reality is just geometry, atoms bumping into atoms, waves displacing air.
It reduces everything to mechanics, just billiard balls hitting each other in the dark.
It does. And the source explicitly says this view humiliates us.
Humiliates. That's a strong word.
It is, but think about the implications. Science expands our view of the past. We know about the Big Bang, evolution, geology. That's great. But it shrinks our internal world. It tells us, you think you're feeling love. No, that's just oxytocin.
Right.
You think you're sad? That's a drop in serotonin. It reduces the subjective experience to an objective formula.
There's that line I wrote down from the text. Science reduces the melody that makes us weep into a formula of algebra. That hits hard, because you can write the math for a Beethoven symphony.
But the math doesn't make you cry. The experience does. And this creates a duality, a conflict. On one side, you have the mechanical universe, the cold, hard facts of movement.
Yeah.
On the other side, you have the soul, the internal world of color, feeling, and dreams. And science seems to suggest the soul is the fake part, that the melody is a lie.
It feels like we're stuck. Either we deny science and live in a fantasy, or we accept science and live in a cold, empty machine.
It's a paradox. If everything is just movement, where does the sensation come from? Where does the joy come from? But the text offers a metaphor here that I think offers a way out. It's the image of the moon in the river.
I loved this visual. It felt like the emotional peak of the whole piece. Let's paint the picture for the listener.
Okay. Imagine a wide river flowing in total darkness. Pitch black night. The water is moving, swirling, crashing against rocks. But because there is no light, that movement is blind. It's just obscure mechanics, force and resistance.
Okay, so that's the mechanical universe. Atoms crashing in the dark without anyone to see them.
Right. Now imagine the clouds break and a ray of moonlight hits the water. Suddenly you see the ripples. You see the sparkle, the flow, the beauty of the current.
And in this metaphor, the moon is consciousness.
Yes. The text argues that consciousness is like that ray of moonlight. It hits the obscure movement of the universe and reveals it. It lights it up. Without the moon, the river is just blind motion. But without the river, the moon has nothing to shine on.
They need each other.
They do. The text suggests we stop seeing mind and matter as enemies. We stop seeing science and soul as opposites. Instead, maybe the melody, or feelings, is just what the algebra, the physics, feels like from the inside.
Whoa, say that again? The melody is what the algebra feels like from the inside.
Exactly. We usually think of them as two different things. But the source hints that maybe movement isn't just physical displacement. Maybe the fundamental nature of the universe is something that looks like mechanics from the outside when we study it with microscopes, but feels like consciousness from the inside when we actually live it.
That actually solves the problem. It means my feelings aren't illusions. They're just the internal view of the machinery.
And that connects back to where we started with dreams. In the dream, you are pure inside. You are pure sensation. In waking life, you have to deal with the outside structure, the logic, the hard surfaces. But they are part of the same continuity.
We don't have to choose between being scientific robots or irrational dreamers.
No. Science explains the instrument. It explains the tuning fork, the retina, the neurons. But it doesn't negate the music. The fact that you can explain how a rainbow forms refraction, light spectrum, moisture, doesn't make it any less beautiful when you see it.
In fact, knowing that my eye evolved over millions of years specifically to catch that rainbow, that actually adds to it. It makes me feel less like a tourist in the universe and more like a
participant.
Yeah.
It makes you realize you aren't an observer separate from the universe.
Yeah.
You are the universe observing itself.
Oh,
We are the gelatin that learned to sing.
the gelatin that learned to sing. I'm definitely stealing that. It sounds like an indie band album title.
It really does.
Yeah.
But it sums up the whole evolutionary journey we just covered.
It does. It's wild to think we've gone from am I dreaming to what is the nature of reality in under 20 minutes. It's a lot to process.
Yeah, this is a dense text. It
Yeah.
asks a lot of the reader. But I think the takeaway is empowering. It gives you permission to trust your own experience.
So, for the listener who's walking around today, maybe sitting on a bus or driving to work, feeling a little bit like a cog in the machine, what's the final thought? What do they do with this?
I would say this. The text challenges us to rethink the idea of movement. It leaves us with this provocative suggestion that maybe the freedom we feel in our souls, our ability to dream, to love, to imagine, and the strict mechanics we see in the stars are actually the same thing, just viewed from different angles.
So, don't let the algebra make you deaf to the melody.
Precisely. The algebra is there. It's real. It governs the planets and your atoms. But the melody is the only thing that gives the algebra any meaning. Without the moonlight, the river is just water in the dark.
I love that. So, next time you wake up, take a second, look around, ask yourself, are you seeing the atoms or are you hearing the music? It's a choice.
It is indeed.
Thanks for diving deep with us.
My pleasure.